Yeah. All right.
All right. Good evening, everyone. We'll jump in and get started so folks can continue with their evenings. Thanks all for being here. We'll get started with just some quick introductions. I'm Emily. I'm one of the co-founders and executive directors. I'm also a parent of a neon oxalato and a water dragon in first grade. And then I've got another kiddo at home who will be in kinder in about 5 years. Ryan, I'm going to pass it to you.
Hi, I'm Ryan. I'm Emily's partner in the school. I'm a co-founder and co-executive director. I also have, I'm also a parent here at New School. My son Barnaby's in 5th grade. And it's a froggy Frappuccino, right, Sonia? I think we've got a couple other, Margaret, Sonia, Jared. I think we've got Ada. We've got a whole bunch. It's froggy Frappuccino, am I right?
Yes, it is.
Nice. And then my daughter is in high school, but is a New School graduate. She graduated. Yeah.
Right. We've got more and more folks coming in, which is exciting. Would love to just do some quick introductions. If it's easier for you to do that in the chat and introduce yourself and say which student or students you're connected to, great. If it's easier to take yourself off mute for a second and let us hear your voice, great as well. So in addition to just introducing who you are and what student you're attached to, if there's anything top of mind for you that you want out of tonight, I have a question about this, or I'm curious about this, let us know and we can make sure we cover it.
Hi, so I guess I'll talk. My name is Sofia. I am mom to Sara, auntie to Barbara, and auntie to Aitana. So I'm here for 3.
Awesome. Love it. Thanks for saying hi.
You're welcome.
Good to see the kiddos too.
Yes.
No, Jimmy. I know what you're gonna ask me. No.
All right. I see people introducing themselves in the chat as well. Thank you for saying hi, Margaret, Sandra, Tamaki, Bryson's mom. Hello. If I'm pronouncing your name inaccurately, please let me know.
Hello.
Well, hi.
Hello. Hi, Sarah. Got Jenny and Jared, Sonia, Hunter and Maria, hello. Great. I don't see anyone dropping in any questions or topics. We've got lots to cover, so don't worry. But if there are specific things you want us to hit on, let us know. Hi, Lonnie. And yeah, we've got a lot of new families here, which is exciting. Welcome. All right, well, let's jump in. So this is our second coffee chat of the year. There's no coffee, as you might have picked up on already, but we're still going to call it that. Back when we were a very small school, we would have coffee. We would do these on Friday mornings at the end of all school meeting. But to accommodate families that live in all parts of the city, we've made more of these virtual because we are seeing a larger turnout when we are more accessible and virtual. And so we have topics for different coffee chats. Tonight's topic is to go over our budget and our finance update. That said, any and all questions are fair questions. But we've prepared a few slides to go over our budget, also to celebrate some wins and update folks on things that we're feeling particularly proud of. We don't want this to feel like a presentation. So if there are questions as we are going through, you can take yourself off mute and ask. You can drop a question in the chat. You can there's a little raise hand feature, but just because it's just Ryan and I, if we miss that and don't see the hand being raised, please take yourself off mute and just ask the question as we're going through. So this feels more like a conversation than a presentation. Sound good? Great. Thanks for the thumbs up, Ryan.
You got it, Emily. Doing a great job. All right. Let's go. So as Emily said, we're gonna cover a couple things, but one we as a way into kind of our budget and some other areas, we want to just talk about some big wins for the school. Emily and I often talk about, just kind of reflect on how the year is going and obviously compare it to previous years. And we really believe that this year is a really strong start to the year. And not only has it just started successfully, but we're coming into it with just kind of wind at our back. And that is honestly, post-pandemic, that's just a really nice place to be. So what are some of these wins? One, we have continued to grow as a school, right, in a city that is seeing declining enrollment, and obviously school systems that are kind of struggling. We have grown every year, and even now that we're a full K-8, we continue to grow as a school. And at the same time, our retention of families is high. So we're really proud about, obviously the success of our school, the demand that our school has, and our ability to continue to grow even amongst challenging circumstances. And while our school grows, we continue to diversify. So we have some new data. So many of you have seen this graph before. But as a school, our demographics have changed over time. And in many or most ways, that's been a really intentional change around really diversifying to reflect, the city of San Francisco. And so here, you can see across, our demographics around race and ethnicity, how since our founding in 2015, we've changed. The biggest change really comes in right after 2019, 2020, where you really do see a significant shift, specifically in our white and Latinx population. After we enter or have our priority in our lottery for those who qualify for free and reduced price meals. So that was a structural change that we really wanted. We really want to make sure that we were opening up access to all families in San Francisco. And that was a key piece. And it's really helped us to diversify the school. And where in this case, there is no absolute majority in the school, we are truly a very diverse school. Another way to look at diversity is around other aspects of our demographics. I talked a little bit about those who are qualified for free and reduced price meals. Here also you kind of can see an increase in that, along with those who are English language learners and our special education population.
Right. So here's a look at our academic outcomes, which have improved consistently for the past 3 years. State testing was suspended for 2 years in the pandemic. And prior to that, we only have data when we have 3rd and 4th graders. So we don't include that data, but looking at the last 3 years, what you see here is that our reading proficiency, so students who are on or above grade level in reading, has improved over the last 3 years, and similarly for math. And you see more significant improvement in math. We also have more distance to go in math because we are underperforming with our math outcomes as compared to our reading outcomes. I think it is worth noting that when we were reauthorized by the state and given permission to open the middle school, and the same time, that is when we got the preference in the lottery for families eligible for free and reduced price lunch. There was a bit of a challenge from the state board to say, okay, we're going to give you this preference. We are going to see your school diversify. And as Ryan said, in really beautiful and important ways. And yet with that diversification will come more need, right? More students who are English learners, students who receive special education services. And I think there was a unstated assumption at that school board hearing that our academic outcomes would decline, or that it would be exceptionally hard for us to maintain what were really high results for both reading and math. And so what you see here is not only have we been able to maintain really strong outcomes, we are improving and doing better every single year for all students. Here is a look at our data as compared to SFUSD and California. This data was released about 2 weeks ago. We had access to our own data from the spring in terms of students who were on or above grade level in reading and math, but the state and local data was just released. So this is really fresh data. It's not that much different from last year. As you can appreciate, it takes a lot for a district of 50,000 kids and a state with millions of kids to see a big swing in their data. But what you can see here is that we significantly outperform SFUSD and the state for reading. Similarly, we outperform for math as well. We also look at our data across all of our, in terms of our focal groups, so looking at subgroup performance. And what you can see here is that we also outperform both the district and the state for all demographics. So for Black students, Latinx students, mixed race students, students eligible for free and reduced price lunch, English learners, and students with IEPs. So I want to note that that is, on one hand, that is something that we are indeed, we pay attention to, and we're proud that students do better here than they would in a district school. And yet that is not the bar, right? We have real gaps that we need to tend to along lines of race and learning ability in the walls of our building. That's the reading data. Ryan, you can flip to the math data. You see a similar trend here insofar as that we outperform the district and the state. Sonia, I see your question, just wondering why it takes longer for us to get our standardized test scores back so much later than SFUSD. You mean in terms of parents getting them, like home in the backpacks?
Right.
Yeah, that's purely logistical on our end in terms of the capacity and what we prioritize early in the year. We prioritize making sure our 8th grade families and the students applying to high school have them first, and then we work and get the data out to align with conferences. If there's ever a situation you need the data sooner for an application, we're always happy to send it. Here's a look at teacher retention, something that we're feeling optimistic about. We have consistently, up until the pandemic, had very strong teacher retention. We do a lot to listen to the feedback of our teachers, make shifts to our program to make sure that we're attracting the very best educators and keeping them here. You see a real dip in teacher retention post-pandemic. So it was interesting. We didn't lose teachers the year after the pandemic. We saw, right, that big dip 2 years post-pandemic, and many of those teachers had been with us before the pandemic and through the pandemic. And now what you're starting to see, we saw, 76% retention heading into the start of our 9th year, and this year we have 80% retention. So feeling much better about the efforts that we've put in and the things that we're doing, again, both to attract, but mostly to retain our amazing teachers.
Now we're going to touch a little bit on our budget and just an update for the budget. And first, I just want to kind of ground everyone in the approved budget. And of course, we approve our budget at the end of our fiscal year, which is June 30th for the coming year. And as we move through the year, we'll readjust our budget based on actuals and then reforecast for the remaining of the year. But this shows kind of what was approved in June. And for those who were with us last year and attended our home and school council meetings and focused on our LCAP, you'll remember that in terms of our revenue, about $6 million of our overall $9 million of revenue comes from state funding. And that is a number of different sources, both from the federal government to the state, and then local. And Emily, I know that this has shifted a little bit, but about $1.8 million of that revenue comes from philanthropy for donations. And of that 1.8, 345, and this is about $100,000 off of that, but 345,000 comes from families. On the expense side, of the nearly $9 million that we spend, about $7 million of that is compensation and benefits. It's our people. The vast majority of our budget comes in the form of people we have, here in the building. That's everyone from our teaching team to our administrators, to our janitorial team. And at the end, we want to have a positive operating income that, that can contribute to our reserve. And that reserve is mandated by the state to be about 5%, or our operating income is mandated by the state to be about 5% of our overall budget. A key set of assumptions around our budget, or that makes up our budget, is around our enrollment and our attendance. Go back to that, $6 million in state revenue. That really is driven by the number of students we have in the building and their, the rate at which they attend. And so when we structured our budget for this year, we assumed 469 students in the building. That would be an increase of around 27 students from last year, and an attendance rate of 96.3, which was going to be around a 2 percentage point increase from last year. What I would say is we deem these as feasible, but ambitious targets. They were aggressive, and we would, in terms of like ramping up our enrollment, and then also making sure that our attendance would continue to increase. And since the pandemic, we have seen a year-on-year increase in our attendance. However, we're still, a couple percentage points below where we were pre-pandemic. Now, coming into this year, what we saw was that we had full enrollment leading up to the first day of school, and we were at 469. And then pretty much the week before, and then the week into the first week of school and after, we saw some transition, and now we're at 457 students, which is basically where we're going to stay for the remainder of the year. We've also seen we've seen our attendance throughout the school, K through 8, is trending lower than 96.3. And we also see it, while it's slightly above where we were last year, it is not trending to be, right, or increase by the amount that we had initially assumed. So we are looking at an attendance rate, or we're looking at an enrollment rate of 457 for the year. We're also going to assume an attendance rate of about 95% for the year. And while that's below where we are now, we also see, right, based on our experience, attendance dip, especially in November and December, and then pick back up through the year. But we want to be conservative in this, because what we don't want to do yet again is overestimate attendance, not hit that mark, because the state will, they do make their state payments based on current attendance throughout the year.
Yeah. So Ryan, somebody just asked in the chat, ADA equals average daily attendance. Do you want to just back up for families that are new to our community and maybe new to how public school funding works? Like, you got into it a little bit, but how ADA is calculated and when the money actually comes.
Yeah, thanks for stopping me. So your enrollment is the number of students you have, and then your attendance obviously is the rate they attend. And then basically what the state does is it says, great, you have 457 students in your building attending 95% of the time. We are going to basically times your enrollment by your attendance rate, and that's the number of students we're going to fund. So here we have every student gets about $11,200. They say, great, we're gonna take your ADA, your enrollment times your attendance rate, and we're gonna times that by your for every student, and that's the amount of money you'll get throughout the year. It's meant to incentivize attendance, and I think that in concept it's really good, because schools then prioritize student attendance, try to get kids in, and for kids who really need to be in school to succeed, that's really important. So when you get into areas of like chronic truancy, where you know you see outcomes for kids really dip when they become chronically truant, it's great to have everyone focused on making sure kids are in attendance. The difficulty is there is no differentiation in attendance between like unexcused and excused. You can have a child who is legitimately sick, should not be at school, and the school will not get funding for that child not being at school. Issue with the school is that most of our costs are sunk costs. You don't get to pull back 5% on your teacher salaries or your building expenses or janitorial. So I think that while it's difficult sometimes to plan, I think the good thing is, again, the focus on attendance means that that attendance is across the state probably better than it would otherwise be.
Margaret's asking if there's any realistic chance the state will change funding to be based on enrollment instead of attendance.
I know that there is a big push to change that. I know that there are legislators working on changing state law or ed code. I don't know, and if it does, it'll take many years. But I don't know. I think, but again, I think there's an effort. There's certainly an effort to do it. So for us, what does this mean? That means as we, from June until now, we've made some changes to our assumptions. While we've still grown 15 students from last year, we have not grown, to the extent we thought. So we're pulling back about 12 students in terms of our overall enrollment, and we're reducing our attendance target by 1.3% to 95. That, along with some other changes around unexpected expenditure that came up, increases in things like utilities that we didn't know. We have now a gap from where we started to where we are now, about $280,000 that we need to close. And so we are looking at reductions and deferrals across the school to close that gap. Clearly, we are really focusing on those things that do not have an impact in the classroom, and that to the greatest possible extent will not have an impact on people within the school.
I forgot there's one more slide on budget. I was going to see if there's any more questions on the budget.
This just goes, people often ask in terms of how we're funded, whether it's the similar or different from, let's say, a traditional public school. Sometimes people say that, there's a difference, either positive or negative, with charters. Charter schools, and we're an example of this, but most charter schools are in the city, all charter schools in the city fall along similar lines, is that we receive less funding from the state and from kind of in local funding streams than a traditional public school. And then also we don't have access to other funding streams, whether that's let's say there's certain parcel taxes, there's certain bond measures that charter schools just aren't able to take part in. So you kind of see the difference in terms of not just the what they call LCFF, that's the local control funding formula, that's the primary mechanism for state funding, differences there, but also just in terms of overall budget and what makes up a budget, the differences in terms of budget per student.
Kat's asking, and I can answer this, Ryan, what does reduction in deferrals mean? I don't think that means anything. I think Brian misspoke. I think he meant to say reductions and or deferrals. We're looking at both things. So an example of a reduction is we have a contract with Parks and Rec to reserve space for PE. It turns out we over forecasted and it's actually not going to cost what we thought. So that's just an obvious reduction. It doesn't impact program. We can make that reduction with no changes whatsoever. Other reductions are looking through literally every line item in our budget, again, to find places where we might have over forecast, or we can reduce the amount we're going to spend and it has minimal impact on program. So trying to look at all those reductions outside of people, deferrals are literally deferring the costs until the next budget, which to some degree kind of kicks the can to the next budget, but it gives us time to be able to plan for that. And they could be expenses that we then don't re-spend on in the next year. We have a decision we could take as to whether or not to pay for that next year. So for example, we have a part-time consultant that helps with analyzing our data. And he's very flexible. And he said, listen, I can be flexible with my contract. I will work for you this year and I can help with, data analysis, and you don't have to pay me until July of next year. So it's moving it to next year's budget. And then we can take a decision if we want to re-up that partnership and have him as a data consultant in our next year's budget or not.
That's a good question.
Did that answer your question, Kat?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And Quinn, you had asked about boosting enrollment for next school year. So one thing to note is that 469 is our ceiling. That's our max. And I think we there is both in terms of just like best practice in terms of number of students in the school, but also just the capacity that our building can handle. So 469 is our max. I would say for next year, we continue to build. We'll continue to build upon the increases, to reach our maximum or close to our maximum. I think we will continue to build upon some of the wins we had this year in terms of how we engage new families, when we engage them, looking at how we are bringing them in, communicating, setting up times for them to visit the school, social events with other families so that they are engaged and bought into the school. So there is less turnover, right? So people who then accept, then fully enroll, and then attend. So we're really trying to work on, those conversion rates so that, as we move through our acceptances and through our wait list, that we really get firm commitments from families. Because what we see is we really see the churn at the very beginning of the school years. And this is a trend that really has come up post-pandemic. So really there. And then obviously building up our just applicant pool in general is something that we're focused on. I would say, the shifts and changes in SFUSD have certainly led to a much greater increase, especially locally here in this area around our school. So we're seeing an uptick. Our applicant pool the number of applications, if you look over time, has increased at least, over the first month of applications. We'll see if that trend holds. But those are the two main ways.
There is a third, and Hunter just put it in the chat, which is
Sure,
TK as a question mark. And so that had not been on the table because we physically did not have enough classrooms for TK. Some folks might know, do we have other first grade parents on the call? Our kinder cohort was small last year, and so that's resulted in a first grade cohort of 31 students this year. So Gabby, who's the head of the elementary school, has a decision to take, which we are supporting her with, of can that cohort reach full capacity in terms of, again, being really kind of doing much more recruitment for this, what will be a rising second grade cohort next year, to get 2 classrooms from that cohort? Or is our time and energy better spent? And there's a lot that goes into setting up a TK classroom, but because we have one kind of quote unquote open classroom, do we open that classroom up for TK, keep this first grade cohort, my daughter's cohort, at 31 kids, they move up? It's a little funky to always have that one small cohort, but it then allows us to have a TK option, which would then also be a small TK cohort that would rise up.
Well, Emily, you seem to have one very strong vote for TK from Hunter and Maria.
Do you guys have an incoming TKer? Maybe.
I would say. I guarantee you one kiddo.
Yeah, and we had looked at the TKK combined classrooms. That's really challenging for a whole host of reasons. And again, going back to a guiding principle we have, which is we really listen to our teachers and what they believe they have the capacity to take on. Our kinder team, which is a phenomenal kinder team, does not have an interest in combined TKK classrooms, nor do we from a management standpoint. So This is kind of the first year, given we have this open classroom, that we can put TK on the table, which is exciting. And if Gabby makes that decision in very short order, we're going to need help finding an amazing TK teacher.
Yeah, I mean, I think we would just like, obviously from a self-interested perspective, we would love our kiddo just to be new school all the way, but we've been forced to start looking at TKs and stuff like that. And just, it seems like there were on the tour, like that we were recently on, there are a lot of people looking for it, a lot of people starting to make, because they changed the rules at SFUSD, starting to make their kinder decisions for TK.
Yeah.
And so it would just be like a bummer to lose the opportunity to like bring in people earlier and just like, yeah. So anyway, strong self-interested vote from us. We love new school. We'd rather spend more time, energy, money here.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I think just, the state is mandating universal TK, which I think is a really, I mean, it's a really supportive move for families. And I think the biggest barrier has been an implementation, well, to facilities, and not just for new school, but generally facilities and people. So I think it is really exciting, and we will have a TK at some point. So it's exciting to be able to look at that sooner rather than later.
Any other questions on the budget before we move into fundraising? Okay, let's go to fundraising. So for returning families, you've seen this logo before. New School Magic Fund is our largest family fundraiser. As Ryan said, when we looked at that budget, you saw that of the 1.7 million that we fundraise for, families play a large role. And this year's target is that our families will support with 345,000 of our overall fundraising target. So here's what Magic Fund is. Like I said, here's a better visual. It is the largest fundraiser of the year. Magic Fund allows us to run our program. So all the funding goes towards general operating, but it supports things that we wouldn't otherwise be able to do just off of public funding. For example, having our resident teachers in kinder and first grade classroom, having a robust arts program for all of our grades. We have 2 full-time art teachers. That is something you don't often find in a public school. We have body percussions with Mr. Antoine for all grades, Spanish in grades K through 4. We have a middle school elective Spanish, overnight trip for 5th grade, and an 8th grade graduation and a signature end of year trip for 8th grade. So those are just some of the things that, again, if we couldn't fundraise on top of what we get in public funding, these would likely be things we would not be able to offer. We're very grateful that we are able to fundraise and that our families are so invested in Magic Fund. Last year, we had 84% participation across the school, which is just incredible. And, have every confidence that we can do it again this year. So here's just a different visual. Here again, you can see our overall fundraising target of just over 1.7 million. Ryan and I are responsible for 1.4 million in fundraising annually. That comes from individuals and foundations. Many of these folks have been supporting us since our very first year. So these are deeply committed supporters that have been part of this journey with us and are really proud of how far we've come. And so a good portion of Ryan and I's time, most of our time, I should say, goes to fundraising because 1.4 million is no small feat. Our families make up 345,000 of that overall pie in terms of our fundraising target. That's broken down into 3 different fundraisers. Magic Fund is our largest. So our target for our Magic Fund this year is to raise $300,000 across all grades. We also have a middle school sports fundraiser. We break that up into the 3 different seasons. That target is 30,000, and that just goes to the middle school sports program. And then Stock the School, which was our kickoff fundraiser, which went to fund materials in classrooms. That money goes directly into the class wallets of teachers. Many parents chose to just buy things off the Amazon wish list, which was incredible. That's what teachers wanted. But those are our 3 fundraisers. We get feedback from families that we'd rather just have one big fundraiser than be asked a number of different times over the course of the year for different things. So we try to bucket as much as we can into Magic Fund so that there's just one big target. It is a big target, but that it is clear to families and they can plan for it and think about how they can participate. Donation considerations for families are here. So targets for higher income families to consider. And this is based on, again, just some math based on the demographics of our community, diversity of our community in terms of income levels, and what would be needed to hit our target of 300,000 across the school. Different range for middle income families and lower income families. Our hope, again, is that all families can participate, even if that's a $5 donation as part of Magic Fund. Participation matters just as much as hitting the target. When Ryan and I go out and we are fundraising and talking to individuals, we often get the question, do families also support and are they part of the fundraising efforts? And donors feel really good when we say, yes, our parents have skin in the game as well. 84% of our families gave back last year to Magic Fund. They are as committed as you are into the long-term sustainability of our school. So that participation metric really matters. Other things to consider as you are planning for how you can have an impact this year is paying monthly for Magic Fund. We've often just asked for, your gift up front, but we've gotten feedback that, hey, if I can pay in monthly installments, then it's I'm able to give a larger amount. That is great. You do not have to make a gift all at once. Magic Fund will run until the very end of the year. The other thing that really boosts our fundraising efforts are company matching. So a number of employers will match. Some employers even at times do 2-to-1 giving. So that is something to certainly be on the lookout for. And then hosting events. This was something we saw happen last year that really boosted participation, were the bake sales that happened in which, a family could participate that way by coming to an event or purchasing something from a bake sale. The other thing, given kind of broad brushstrokes of what you saw about our budget and kind of needs to be able to plan for the future, is asking families who are in a position to do so to make a multi-year gift to the school. That doesn't mean you give all the money up front, but you say, hey, here's my gift for the next 3 years. I can commit X dollars this year, next year, and the following year. That allows us then to have much greater visibility into our budget and what we can plan for. So we're not in a reactive state of saying, I don't know, can we have 2 full-time art teachers? Oh, yes, we can. So being able to have even more confidence in hitting our fundraising targets over the next 3 years, again, allows us to make strategic decisions much earlier in the game. I'll pause there. That was a lot of information. Oh, Ryan just put up, here's our participation from last year. I was wrong. It was not 84%, it was 85% across the school. There were a number of families give anonymously. And so if we didn't know who the gift came from, it went into the entire school, hence the reason that 85 is not a straight average of all of those grades. But I'm sure current 6th grade families would love a shout out that our last year's 5th grade cohort was the highest in terms of participation.
Impressive.
Any questions on fundraising broadly, on Magic Fund? What was our Magic Fund goal last year? Quinn, it was 300,000. It was the same amount. So we are not increasing, even though we have a few more families than we had last year. We're keeping the goal the same. Are we meeting our goals for Stock the School and sports? We are on track for sports. Again, sports is going to be done in 3 waves. We have a fall sports, winter sports, and spring sports. And we are looking good in terms of what we forecasted from fundraising. We raised just about $12,000 from fall sports, which is great. And Stock the School has passed, and teachers were overwhelmed. We raised much more. So actually with Stock the School, we combined both what families gave in terms of some families just gave money to the school to put in the class wallets of teachers. And many parents, however, elected to just buy things off the Amazon wish list. Sonia's saying, I think we can do really well with participation if we're more organized with the bake sales. I agree. One of the things we're also looking at, and I'd welcome any feedback if families here have thoughts on this, is breaking up Magic Fund and giving a discrete goal to each grade. So what that would look like is, you know, let's take kindergarten, for example, might have a $30,000 goal for fundraising. And I think the idea behind that is 300,000 is a really big number, and that can feel overwhelming to families and might feel like, hey, my $100 gift isn't going that far. And so kind of breaking that up by grade, you know, makes it feel, you know, smaller and more attainable. And then I think it also helps with things, Sonia, like the bake sales or the fundraiser for kinder families to say, okay, everyone's donated and, you know, at their giving level, and yet we still have this $5,000 gap to close. How could we come together as a kinder community? Hey, we could do, we could have kinders draw pictures and sell those pictures to family members and turn the profit back to the school for Magic Fund. But my hope is then it would help grade levels also just build some community and come together. Last year, we certainly saw that with the participation. We saw grade levels really get jazzed and come together around the participation. For new families, there are also some fun prizes along the way when grade levels get to certain participation metrics. So classes got stickers of their, you know, froggy frappuccinos, and there was a pizza party once the grade level hit 80% participation. So there's other things we do to try to make it fun and incentivize giving. I welcome any thoughts if anyone has feedback on kind of breaking up the bigger target and giving smaller targets to each grade level. And yeah, Quinn, I agree with you. I think a craft sale could be a really fun way. It also gets students involved if students are making those crafts.
Yeah, I think there can be a lot of really creative ways and fun, and to Emily's point, really fun ways for, you know, the community to come together and raise money.
Hey, Anne, can I put you on the spot? I'm not sure I fully understand your question. What about going back to families giving for field trips?
Sure. I remember years ago, there was a beginning of the year payment for field trips, and you could then quote unquote provide scholarships to others. So it was basically saying a little more specifically what some of your money was going to. And it definitely wasn't tied to like it never felt like it was required for your kid to go on the field trip.
Yeah. Love that. Yeah, we've never made a field trip, paying for a field trip to be required for students to go on. The two most expensive field trips are the 5th grade overnight trip and then the signature 8th grade trip. We're folding both of those into Magic Fund. So 5th grade will, just full transparency, if we kind of break this up and give each grade level a different target, 5th grade will have a larger target because of the 2-night overnight trip they go on, and 8th grade will have a larger target because of graduation and the end 8th grade signature trip. To Anne's point, if a family cannot give anything, that does not mean the kid cannot go on the overnight. But that helps us, one, raise the money for these expensive events. And for families that have more resources, if you know what that cost is for the field trip and you can do more, you're helping to ensure other students can go as well. Does that answer the question, Anne?
It wasn't a question. It was just an idea to go back to beginning of the year, naming how much per kid we pay for for field
Oh,
trips,
got it. Yeah.
asking families to pay that, and then saying you can also double or triple, not for scholarships.
Got it. Be more transparent about what field trips cost. Love it. And Quinn is saying that the participation prizes for the class are motivating. Yeah, we saw that last year a lot. It was really fun. And grade levels got competitive with it. It was fun to see a little healthy competition between grades. Awesome. Well, we'll keep moving. If other questions pop up, jump on in. I think we've got one more slide to talk about what's happening at SFUSD.
Yeah, and this is not so much, we don't have great insight into, you know, SFUSD and school closures, but we do get a lot of questions around our school, how our school is impacted or will be impacted by some of the changes that may happen within SFUSD. So we just want to make sure that we're, you know, really clear about what we know, and what we believe, what we believe going forward. So one, that New School SF is not impacted by school closures. We are authorized by the state of California, and our charter will be renewed in 2028. What that means is that when SFUSD was looking at their schools, they're really looking at their portfolio of schools, and I think there are like 120 some odd schools. They had identified in that 11 schools for closure, and I think there are maybe 2 others for mergers. However, this process has been paused for now. Of those 11 schools, 4 schools were in about a mile radius of our site, and so a lot of families impacted by that here locally, and obviously a lot of anxiety about, you know, their schools' futures and sustainability. The criteria that was publicly posted about school closures for SFUSD was they were focused on those schools under, you know, 260 students. They looked at metrics around demand, the density of, you know, the school age population within that area, and the performance of those schools. They paused all school closures. So, and I don't think they've announced when they'll be going back to them. I said previously, we have experienced kind of increased interest in our school. Certainly the numbers of people that are coming on, like the 2 school tours we've had thus far. I mean, significantly more than we've had in the past. However, we are not going to be proactively recruiting any students or facilities from those schools that are slated for closure. I mean, I think that, you know, that those schools and their communities are going through quite a significant amount of potential change and obviously incredible disruption. So while, you know, our applications are open, our doors are open for tours, and we're certainly, you know, we will certainly have an open door to families. You know, we're not going to proactively recruit. That's really all we know. And of course, we get the news just like everyone else, and we'll attempt to be on top of it. But that is what we know thus far.
I have a question, and which is the search for a permanent home on hold for now?
That's a really good question, Emily. Our search for a permanent home. So we have paused it. Emily and I are taking back up that search, meaning from the beginning of this year, we are picking back up, or, you know, putting more time into our capital campaign and continue to raise money for a school building. We came off, and so those are new to the community. We were very close. I mean, I don't know, signatures length from securing our building. We actually pulled back from that after having done, you know, I would say about a year of negotiations and due diligence, spending a ton of not just time but resource on that process. but the commercial real estate market had changed significantly, along with some other factors, which made the deal untenable. So we pulled back from that, and with that, understanding that that things were still very much in flux, said we're going to pause for now. We're going to see where the market, kind of where the market goes, and wait for it to stabilize a bit before we kind of re-entered into this process. The process takes an enormous amount of time and money, and so we want to make sure we're very ready, able, and are in the right position with ample opportunity to transact when the time is right. We believe that time is now, so we're going to be re-entering. We're re-engaging our team. We have an excellent team. Everyone from our real estate broker to our owner's rep and project manager, our general contractor, all of those people who are needing to be engaged to identify and really explore opportunities. So we are reactivating it, and we'll let the community know more about that as we move forward. We're really excited about it, and we believe there are some good opportunities out there, but like everything in real estate in San Francisco, it is not easy. And finding school facilities is slightly like needle in a haystack. However, we've been very lucky thus far in terms of one, finding a great team, but also unearthing really good possibilities, which unfortunately didn't pan out. But we know that the next one is out there. Any questions on school closure or new school, kind of in relation to school closures and or our long-term facilities?
I have a question, Ryan. Does
Yeah,
our push for more enrollment still fit the current building? Does that make sense?
Mhm.
The current.
The 469 that we had hoped to achieve this year is the max. And so we believe that would have fit within the building.
Okay.
We can't go higher than that in this current building. And so for folks who are new to our community, obviously one of the drivers of a permanent facility is we are convenient for a very small number of families, being in one of the most northern parts of the city. And so being more centrally located helps with accessibility for the majority of our families. Another driver is with a larger facility, we can serve more students, and we also have more space for programming and the arts and possibly a theater and a yard, all the things that we dream of and desperately want for our students. So we don't see ourselves right now at kind of full enrollment in our current building. We believe is 470. But we would like to be in a building in which we can serve more students. And so buildings that we are looking at are buildings that serve at least 800 students. One of the buildings, I think the largest one that we were serious about could have served 1,200 students.
And the vision is still stay in the current building, if we don't have a permanent home. I guess that's what I was wondering is there a point numbers wise where we would ask for a bigger building from the district?
Yeah, No, I think I think that that people ask what is the time frame for moving into a new building? I would say at a minimum it's 2 years, given the time it takes to identify, transact, and redevelop, right? So I think that would be at a minimum. I would say, is there a possibility that the district, because the district school closures is one aspect of how the district is trying to kind of reorganize themselves to close what is a really significant budget deficit. Another part of that, and not with the schools that are closing, but looking at how they use the facilities that they have and that are either underutilized or unutilized facilities, and kind of monetizing them. So if something came up with the district where they said, hey, you know, we have a large facility that you could rent, and then of course we'd be open to that, and that would mean the time frame for moving into it would be, in some cases, less than 2 years. Although many of those facilities need quite a significant amount of work, so I imagine 2 years is probably still safe. So that, yes, it's a possibility. The district, while again, their plans were they were going to have a more structured process for utilization of their facilities from, kind of from organizations outside of the district. That hasn't come up yet. And facilities has always been a very touchy subject with the district. And so we keep in close contact. We're certainly open, and they know it. But I'm not optimistic that, given kind of the current state of affairs within the district, that's going to come out about soon.
All right. If there are no other questions, we've got about 2 minutes left. Were there any other slides, Ryan? Is that it?
That's it.
That's it. Covered a
Good.
lot of ground.
Good.
Appreciate everyone being here. Appreciate the questions we got and the suggestions around fundraising and Magic Fund. If you don't mind if you're in a place you can take off your video and say goodbye live, we always love to see people. And make sure you vote if you haven't. Have a plan for tomorrow.
Hi, everybody.
Thanks, you
Have a
guys.
good
And if you've
night.
already voted, give yourself a pat on the back. Good night,
Bye.
folks.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye, everybody. Thank
Night.
you.
Good
Bye.
night.
Good night.
Okay,
Bye,
bye.
Jenny.
Oh,ทำไม
Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye. Oh, we have a student.
A couple.